Today on the 10-12 podcast, I am joined by Scott from Boscoe's Boys and Justin Williams from The Athletic to rank the 10 most important, most impactful players in the Big 12 Conference for the 2024 season. Obviously, we have more than 10 because we each have our own rankings, our own thoughts. We've got players from a ton of teams. We've got things that make Scott roll his eyes. Justin is absolutely incredible. This is day 4, night 4 of Rankings Week. We've got one more live show to go. If you haven't had a chance to make one, join us Thursday night. We're doing our preseason rankings for the Big 12.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 10-12 podcast. Covers all 16 teams. I'm not going to get used to that yet. In the Big 12 Conference, of course, we're the flagship show of the 10-12 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. Thank you for joining us for night 4 of Rankings Week. If you have been here every night with us, thank you so much. My wife is ready for this to be over. So bless her. She's found something to do every night. It was very much like, I guess I'll find something to do since you're going to be in podcasting all night long.
Congrats on having a wife.
So
it in.
I've got her. I'm like, look, we've got your family reunion this weekend. So is it fair? It feels like a fair trade-off. That's okay. This is night 4. I'm getting, this is what happens when I go live is I just start to rant about random things that pop into my mind. Tonight, we are doing the 10 most important, impactful players for the Big 12 Conference this upcoming season. We have myself, and as we have done every night, we have guests. Tonight, we have 2 guests, again, like last night, from in the network, inside the 10-12 network, the host of Boscoe's Boys. And look, just for our good friend Scott, I wore my Kansas State hat that I happen to have. You're welcome. Sorry, Justin, you didn't get the K-State hat memo. This is, of course, Scott, the host of Boscoe's Boys. Good friend, great host. Welcome back, bud.
I'm pumped. This is actually the 4th podcast episode I've recorded today. Yeah, so did a bunch of the summer school Behind Enemy Lines series that we've been running Thursday and Friday the last couple of weeks. I'm actually now done recording that series. Actually, no, got Viva La Cats on Friday. But I'm almost done with that series that will conclude next week, and it's officially the beginning of the end of the off season. And I do have to tell you, I love the K-State hat, but I think at some point I'm going to have to get you some merch, especially one of the great hats from our friends over at Manhattan Brewing Company. I
wore my Manhattan Brewing Company hat Sunday and Monday.
Okay, well then, you don't need any extra swag from me, but I recorded with Jake a couple weeks ago, and he specifically wanted me to tell you he says hello.
Oh, well, that's very nice. I love those guys. Yeah, no, I wear my, I've got a very nice black felt flat bill with the leather patch on the front. I wore that Sunday and Monday, and then I mixed up. So I wore TCU yesterday, K-State today. I don't have OSU on to wrap things up. I've got shirts for most of the Big 12 schools. I'm like working on hats. At some point when I have an office and a space again, it's not just the girls' playroom with, don't get me wrong, I love the Lego sets we put together. Like the background will be a really cool like hat wall. It'll just be hats of all different schools and such. But so I have to do all my collecting right now. Also joining us, very excited to have him here on the show. I feel like the guests get better and better each night. Don't tell Joe I said that because that sounds really bad since he was our first guest. But Justin Williams of The Athletic used to cover Cincinnati, now covers the Big 12 as a whole. Justin, welcome back, man.
I appreciate you guys having me. I don't have any swag, but I guess I have. This is the giveaway Big 12 Media Day notebook. So I think that might count. And I am on hotel Wi-Fi. So if I get garbled or cut in and out, apologies.
Justin, I have to ask, no, I'm jumping in, Phillip. I know it's your show, but I've had a bullet bourbon or two. Justin, did you see those coffee mugs that were circulating at Big 12 Media Days? Was that only like the higher end media, or did you snag one of those? What's the story with those?
So I got, I guess you could call it a coffee mug at the Big 12 men's basketball tournament in Kansas City. It was more like a coffee kind of shot glass, like espresso style. It was small, but they also, unfortunately, they gave a nice bottle of barbecue sauce that I couldn't finish and then take on the plane in the amount of time I was in Kansas City. But I did not grab one from Media Day.
You put it in the shot glass. You take the shots of barbecue sauce.
I mean, that's what we were doing. Yeah, I think that's how you take the burn end, then you chase it with the shot of barbecue sauce.
Well,
but there's only so many you can do.
I have to ask, do you know which barbecue spot they gave you the sauce from? Do you remember?
If you throw some out,
Q39 Jack Stack.
Q39 is great. It was not in that one. Well, it might have been Bates, or it was another. It might have been Gates.
Okay,
it wasn't Joe's.
Joe's. Yeah, there's a lot. There's
it was
so
like an
many.
old institutional KC one.
Yeah,
maybe
so
Gates.
if it'd be Gates or Jack Stack probably.
I think it was Gates, which I don't know that I've had. I have had Q39
or Arthur Bryant's. I don't know. We're saying all these. Phillip needs to come out to Big 12 basketball tournament and see all the barbecue.
Oh, look, I am like every birthday for my girls is like 1 year closer to a little enough, like old enough that I have a little more freedom to like leave for the weekend and not leave my wife with just an absolute house of chaos and a now 2-year-old who still acts like a baby because of course she's the baby of the family and still wants to be treated like a baby sometimes. So we're getting close. And the mugs are awesome. I am in case Clark is watching this, you can mail me one anytime, bud. Anytime would be great. Okay. We are ranking the most important players in the Big 12 this season, the ones that will have the biggest impact in the conference. We all have our list. The way we're going to do this, I am going to let Justin, since he is not as much of a regular guest as Scott is, go through his list 10-1. And so as you name someone, then Scott and I can add our input on if we had them there. That way we're not doing like someone talks about Avery Johnson, and then 5 minutes later we're talking about Avery Johnson, then 20 minutes later we're talking about Avery. So that way we'll go ahead and talk about one player at a time and kind of get all our thoughts out on that one. And then once Justin is done, we'll go through who Scott has on his list we haven't discussed, and then we'll go through I have on my list that we haven't discussed. And that's how we'll do this show tonight. That way we'll hit everybody on all our lists. I've loved doing it this way because it really does kind of give us an opportunity to talk about a lot of different players. We may say that we're going to talk about the 12 most impactful games, but I think we talked about 20 something games last night. Transfer portal players, we had 12 each, and that list was more like 17. So it really gives us an opportunity to emphasize, like, even when we're doing lists like this, it's really hard because there's really a whole lot more players who are going to make a big impact, a whole lot more games. When you have 16 teams in a conference without divisions or any sort of format like that, it's just like there's going to be so much that it's fun. Like it really does feel like this year, in the first year, it's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant, not a fire hose, a fire hydrant. Like they pop the whole thing open and you're trying to drink out of that. Like that is what this feels like, and it's both fun and exciting. I hope it doesn't feel like this next year, or I might have to retire. But we're going to give it a shot, at least for year one of 16 teams. I don't need any more. I don't need AC. Don't do this to me again. Can we wait 4 years before we add anyone else? The 2030 is fine. All right. So, Justin, you are up first. Who is number 10 on your list?
So number 10, I have Micah Hudson, the true freshman wide receiver from Texas Tech. This is like the classic kind of cheating in the 10 spot. I don't think he's going to be one of the 10 most impactful players necessarily, though he might be because he's crazy talented. Why I think he's important is more or less about this year for Texas Tech and more about the future. Obviously, huge recruit, biggest recruit in kind of the modern recruiting era for Texas Tech, a feather in the cap of Joey McGuire. They've talked about that he's going to come in and play right away, and you kind of got to say that when you get a recruit of Micah's caliber to a place like that. He did miss spring ball, I think, with like a left knee scope, but all the reports are he's going to be good to go and play this season. The reason I think he's important is because and I talked about, or I wrote about this at The Athletic. What you can't have Micah Hudson come in and you don't use him, or he kind of doesn't pop, and then he's in the transfer portal a year later, and all the excitement and all the fanfare you had from getting this big 5-star top 10 recruit in that class is gone because he's gone. So, by all indications, this kid's ready to come in and play and be a contributor right away. Assuming that is the case, you got to find ways to use him, because that's only going to help them recruiting moving forward. They've done a good job, McGuire and Coach Juice, their wide receiver coach. They've got a couple like in-state 4-star kids at receiver who were committed in the 25 class. They've kind of built on that momentum a little bit. And this is what McGuire sold when he took over. He was, the high school coach in the state. He knows the state really well. He's going to get these kids. He knows how to go after them. So now you got to kind of come in and show like, all right, we got this kid. Now we can use him. And so any other recruits out there who want to go to Texas or A&M or TCU or wherever, it's, if you can bring Micah Hudson in and he's an immediate impact player as a true freshman, that just helps you immensely moving forward, in the same way that if he doesn't and he's in the transfer portal and he goes to Texas or wherever a year from now, that then hurts that sales pitch. People will use that to recruit negatively against you. So Mike Hudson could be a breakout impact player on the field for Texas Tech, but to me, like, he's so important this year for what Joey McGuire is trying to do in the future moving forward.
Okay. I like it. Scott, do you have Mike Hudson on your 10?
I do not, but I want to applaud Justin, because for the 10 spot in this exercise, looking beyond just this year and really setting the table for what Joey McGuire wants to accomplish at Texas Tech. You now kind of make me feel inferior with my list when I'm looking at my 1 through 10. So you laid out the perfect vision, and I think for Texas Tech to achieve what they want to in this new world of college sports, this new world of college football, being able to present Texas kids a path to be an immediate impact, especially those 5 stars, you have me sold. So I'm ready to put him as my number 1 after hearing you talk. So
he's the only kind of big picture one I had, but I do think that there's that there's something there with him and what it could mean long term. All right. I'm guessing you didn't have him either, Phillip.
I did not. I have, hold on, let me look. Do I have it? I have 1 wide receiver on my list, and it is not him.
Okay. It might be
I get it. It's a great argument, and I love it. It's a fantastic pick. I appreciate that you used your number 10 to go a little bit outside the box. That's what makes this fun. I think that's fantastic. All right. Number 9, Justin. Who's number 9 on your list?
Yeah. The other thing is I was trying to not just go QB with every pick, because I think
I know.
I got 6 QBs, so that was like one of my non QB picks.
Which is wild for the year of the quarterback in the Big 12 and how much the quarterbacks are getting talked about because of how important they are. Like, it's actually a pretty good quarterback group in the Big 12 this year. I think it's a lot better than it was last year.
Yeah.
And so you look at them and you go, I mean, I get it, quarterback's important, but quarterback is so important this year because it's just in a conference like this, if you don't have one, you're going to fall way behind. And it doesn't necessarily Micah Hudson's importance isn't necessarily just about whether or not Texas Tech can make it to Arlington this year. It is importance from a this year and a long-term standpoint. And I get all that, but it's so hard not to just pick quarterbacks. And so I'm sure we all have 6 or 7 quarterbacks on our list, and that's fine. It is what it is. It's a perfect opportunity to talk about quarterbacks. So I'm sorry I interrupted, Justin. Please, who do you have at number 9?
No, you're not, my next 4 quarterbacks. So we're going to get into a lot. At number 9, I have Shedeur Sanders. Similar situation. For me personally, I don't think Colorado is going to make the Big 12 championship game. I don't personally think they're necessarily going to be in the title race. I could be wrong. They have a lot of talent. They have arguably the best quarterback in the conference. We'll see. They have arguably the best kind of position or skill position talent in the league. If you feel that way about Travis Hunter, we'll see. Could have put Travis Hunter on this list, but for me, the Shedeur Sanders thing, I do think whatever success Colorado has this year is going to have a lot to do with Shedeur and maybe how he progresses from last year in terms of, can you take less sacks? Can you protect yourself a little bit better? Because that's going to be important. But also this is another one, I guess, also kind of looking ahead, is Shedeur a first-round quarterback? And I think we're going to find that out this year. maybe that's important for Colorado, especially if, Deion Sanders stays there for a while. Can you then bring in the next heir apparent to Shedeur, who's not your son, and be able to point to, hey, this guy's yes, he's my son, but I also made him a first-round quarterback. He's shown a lot of signs. He also seems to be really divisive. I am not a draft evaluator, talent evaluator, but you hear some people say like, oh, for sure, he's a top 15 first-round quarterback. Then you see some people say maybe he's too small, maybe he does take too many sacks, and there's some questions about it. I think he's a gamer. Like, whatever he becomes at the NFL level, I do think like there was some times last year where he was getting drilled. He held on to the ball. He didn't make great decisions. I think he can play. I think he can be a difference maker. And so while I don't think that Colorado is going to be in Arlington at the end of the year, I'm very curious to see, can Shedeur take a step? Can he become a first-round NFL draft pick? And then what does that do for Colorado and Deion Sanders moving forward after that?
I don't have Shedeur on my list. He's great for a soundbite, and maybe I'm trying to a little bit too hard to be a hipster. I do have someone from Colorado on my list. We'll get to that pick at some point, but I don't have Shedeur. I do have to say this, and I've said this on a couple shows now. Shedeur Sanders saying at Big 12 Media Days, we are everyone's Super Bowl. I don't think he's necessarily wrong. Is it the number one with a bullet game for everyone? No, it's not. But it is in that upper echelons. And the fact that they're playing into it, the fact they're not trying to take some of that shine off is why I don't think they're going to make a bowl game. I understand being, confident, having that bravado. But if they came in just a little bit more calm, a little bit less playing to the clicks, as Dan Lanning would like to say, I think maybe they'd have a shot at being a bowl team. I don't think they have a shot because they are making it so they can't creep up on anyone.
No, it's true. And they're going to have a lot of people watching them, like they did last year. But, it's also, I think we're going to get a sense pretty early, like they could lose to North Dakota State in that first game. And so like North Dakota State's going to be really jacked up for that. So I'm with you there. I think they need to get to a bowl game to kind of, feed some of the hype they've been getting. But I could certainly see a scenario where they don't make one. Yeah,
look, they teams were circling them last year in the Pac-12. Like that's not new for them. Like him saying that is fine. I mean, it's a little bit different because last year you could really tell when games where they knew they were going to get blown out, Deion was much quieter. He didn't have the verbal bravado out in public when it was games where they like going into Oregon. You didn't see Deion saying a lot because he knew deep down they were about to get steamrolled, and they did. And so like I don't know that confidence is a plus or minus for them because he's not necessarily wrong. Everyone's got them circled. Super Bowl, sure, if that's the term you want to use, because that's the term that gets used. But like, yes, everyone's going to have Colorado circled because every time one of them opens their mouth, everyone's going to be like, all right, I look forward to the opportunity to shut it. So I get it. I do have him on my list. I have him at number 7. Like here's the thing. I went back and forth between him and Travis Hunter. And the difference for me is like, if they lose Hunter, I think they've upgraded enough around talent that like, Hunter is not as big a loss as Shedeur Sanders is. Hunter is a far better player. Hunter is a better athlete. Hunter is one of the best. Like Hunter is a guy who should legitimately be getting real Heisman buzz preseason and should be considered, especially if they do reach a bowl game. Like, but if they lose Travis Hunter, I doesn't necessarily change my expectations of Colorado. If they lose Shedeur Sanders, I won't pick them to win a game. Like that's the level of importance to me of him on that roster compared to everybody else on that roster. So I have on the list too. I think it makes a lot of sense. So that is enough Shedeur Sanders talk, and we'll move on. All right, number 8, Justin, who you got?
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Another quarterback, I have Garrett Green from West Virginia. Really dynamic player, had a really good season last year as kind of that dual threat guy. Threw for over 2,400, 16 touchdowns. Let's see, he ran for 772, which was just under like CJ Donaldson. He was kind of that three-headed attack of White, Donaldson, and Green. I like him a lot. He completed 53% of his passes. Like, he needs to get better there. And this is something that Neil Brown's talked about it at West Virginia, that, he kind of feels like Green is undervalued and maybe not talked about in the same way that some of these other quarterbacks are. I think part of that is I think the completion percentage hurts it. I think some of that was his fault, last year, that he maybe could have checked down more or just kind of made the easier play. I also think they weren't good at wide receiver last year. I think they've gotten older at that. They've upgraded a little bit, bringing in Jaden Bray from Oklahoma State. I think they like him and feel like he's going to be a big piece for them this year. But for me, there's a couple guys on this list coming up where if the quarterback takes a step and plays really well, like, the team has a chance to compete. And for me, like, Garrett Green is right in that. He's got to stay healthy, because him running is a big part of what they do offensively. And, I talked to Neil Brown about this, where it's, trying to instill in him, like, every play is not a depiction of your manhood. It's okay to slide. It's okay to run out of bounds. And you could, say that about KJ. You could say that about Avery Johnson. There's a couple other guys in this league who, are mobile and run around a lot, and that's going to apply to. And so I think if he can mature a little bit and take another step, especially throwing the ball, like, I think West Virginia, because of how well they can run, they could be a team that is in that mix, when you get to November.
I don't have him on this list. I sent this to Phillip, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I got excited. I sent him all of my stuff. And when I revisited it today, that was the one on my list that I didn't have. I was like, do I want to go against my gut instinct and add him? And I didn't. I think they have enough good running backs that they are who they are. I don't think that they're an Arlington contender, but I think in the important games, because I sent Phillip my list for all of them, I think my final 3 games, and I said, hey, yeah, it was my final 3 games. I had West Virginia games, and I didn't even include all of their games. I think they're going to be the king maker. They just aren't going to be the king. Whoever goes to Arlington is going to have to beat West Virginia, and anyone they beat will be eliminated. I think they're the litmus test to be an Arlington team. So that's the one. If I was to redo it 15 minutes before we hit record, he would have been on my list, but he's not.
He's not on mine either. I do have a West Virginia player, but we'll get to him at some point. It's not. I tried not to do as much projecting of can they get better, right? I do think if he does get a higher completion percentage, like, this is the thing about the quarterback in the Big 12. Like I said, like, I think there are a lot of options for first team Big 12 quarterback at the end of the year if guys do this or this or this or this or this. And I think West Virginia's ceiling is going to be dependent upon, yes, the defense and if the depth is there, but also, does he take a step forward? I picked somebody else that will have an impact because of how important the run game is for West Virginia this year. Like, that's a running team. Like, yes, if he continues to be a better passer, that's just going to raise the bar. But this is a 3-headed rushing attack monster. Like, that is what is on. And we know how good his legs are with Jim White and CJ Donaldson. So I did not have him. Again, only picking 10 players. Like, there's going to be some guys who are like, how could you not have? Because there's 10. And they could have made this list 30. And I still would have felt like I left some guys off of it. So, okay. Number 7.
Another quarterback, I'm going Rocco Becht from Iowa State. Very different player from Garrett Green, but just kind of a similar argument from me, which is I'm pretty bullish on Iowa State. They have a bunch of returning production. They were my team when I was going through like post spring that, I kind of, if you can consider them a dark horse, they're kind of outside that top 4. Like they were the one that I was most intrigued by. And it's because of him. Like, everyone in Ames remembers, but I think a lot of people understand he was not supposed to be the starter last year, and he kind of got thrust into it a year sooner than expected. And I actually think they're really going to benefit from that because you saw him get better over the course of the year. And I think he has a chance to really continue to grow and improve. But similar situation to Garrett Green and to the next guy I'm going to talk about, in the sense that, he's the delta for me for Iowa State. I think Iowa State's going to be pretty solid if he's average. And I think if he's really good, that Iowa State could be really good.
So we still haven't hit anyone on my list. I'm not a Rocco believer. The finale of my summer school behind enemy line series is Iowa State Farmageddon final week of the season. I think when you look at Rocco, I think it's an inkblot test. I think you can see what you want in him. I think that if he exceeds what I expect from him, it'll be like, okay, he's a solid top half of the conference type of quarterback. I don't see any scenario in which he is a top 4, top 5 quarterback in the Big 12. I'm someone who thinks that if there wasn't a blizzard in Manhattan, Kansas, everyone's looking at Iowa State and saying, sure, they return a lot of production, but it's from a 6-7 team that got their ass kicked by Memphis in a bowl game. So I think if weather or if there was something to play for in Manhattan would have been a little different, a lot of hype around Iowa State would not be there. I'm also salty. I'm also a K-State fan who buys into the Farmageddon rivalry pretty big. I have someone from Iowa State on my list, but I fully acknowledge anytime that there's one of these rankings, and I sent all of it to Phillip with my reasoning. I think I called myself out for being biased in a couple of those against Iowa State. So anyone Iowa State listening or watching live, I fully acknowledge that it's coming from a place of bias in the Farmageddon rivalry, but I just do not buy into him being a top 5 contender. I think if he has a good season, we'll say, all right, he's the 8th best quarterback in the conference.
I do have Rocco. I've got him number 5. I am on the high on Rocco's side. And I think that I actually have another Iowa State player on this list, which looking at now,
you have 2. Oh my, Phillip.
Yeah.
You're running a network and you have 2 Iowa State
logging off.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not, because Phillip is awesome in this ranking weeks. It has been awesome. But I am reconsidering some stuff. I'm reconsidering how I feel about.
I have Iowa State as more of a like should be contending team than you do, and that's okay. That's okay.
Oh, I already know with Shahan on tomorrow. I know, and I told you this. I told you this before we hit record. I can't watch it live because Shahan, one of my all-time favorite human beings in the world, I can't watch that live because I might say something I'd regret in the chat. So I know I'm going to have to listen to that one the next day.
That's fine. You can just leave a review, leave it 5 stars as well. We'd really appreciate that when you listen on iTunes, or 5 stars on Spotify is also good. The context for Rocco is I don't think he was as thrust into the starting role as late as I think most people think. I think Iowa State knew what was going to come with Hunter Deckers and the investigation far earlier than we all did. And so Rocco was kind of the guy they were preparing earlier than we thought. I think that kind of showed in the results because I went into the season like, okay, well, this whole scandal is going to throw the whole year off. Good luck getting to a bowl game. And then they did get to a bowl because they kind of exceeded expectations based off everyone had because of the investigation. And so I do think that plays into a lot of people's expectations, and they do return a lot. But as we mentioned, returning production is only as good as the production actually is. So it's a metric to pay attention to, but I do like Rocco, and I do think he can take another step. I would like him a lot more, and I would like Iowa State a lot more if they didn't have a third offensive coordinator in 3 years, but alas, c'est la vie. I think I'm high enough on him to think that he is important because Iowa State's defense is going to be good like it always is. And so if he is good, you talk about West Virginia being a kingmaker. Like even if Iowa State doesn't make Arlington, Iowa State is such a pain. Like if he has really good games, it's going to lead to losses that some are not expected, that is going to impact the race to Arlington. So that's why I have to have him on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could put Jaden Higgins. I think you could put Jalen Noel. I think you could put Abu Sama. But like to me, I'm a little more confident in those guys, which is why like I have Rocco as more important, because I think there's more room for growth and more potential impact if he does take that next step.
All right, number 6.
All right, this is the last in my run of 4 straight quarterbacks before we take a little break. I have KJ Jefferson. Transfer quarterback into UCF, comes over from Arkansas. To me, he is the biggest example of this. I think UCF has some really good offensive talent. RJ Harvey, Kobe Hudson, they bring in Penny Boone in the transfer portal. I think they're going to be good. I think they'll be able to run the ball offensively. If KJ Jefferson, if he can like tap into that full potential, which I'm sure if any Arkansas fans are watching this, they're like screaming because that was part of the problem at Arkansas. But if Gus Malzahn can like find that and tap into that, that to me takes like UCF from middle of the pack, best of those former G5 teams this year to like fringe contender in my mind. If he's all the way like peak KJ Jefferson, I don't know if he can get there, but that's why I think he's so important, because I think, there's, if he struggles a little bit and just, is kind of beyond what his prime was as a college player, at least, then middle pack, maybe even lower floor for UCF. If KJ Jefferson comes in and, Gus Malzahn's able to tap into like the Cam Newton, Nick Marshall offense or something like that, then I think you're talking like UCF is going to be in the hunt a little bit late into the season. I don't know if they can get to Arlington. I'm not ready to say that, but I think the potential of KJ Jefferson is really high there.
UCF is my dark horse. KJ Jefferson is number 6 on my list. And if I would have applied for credentials, KJ Jefferson would have been my preseason newcomer of the year. I think Arkansas was the problem, not KJ Jefferson. I think that this is a Kroger brand, Cam Newton. I think that Gus Malzahn is going to shock folks. I think they are going to contend for Arlington. And I'm a KJ Jefferson believer. I think this is the perfect fit. And if he doesn't succeed, and if UCF falls, short of, if they end up with 6 or 7 wins instead of 8 or 9 or more, I think my entire opinion of Gus Malzahn needs to be reevaluated, because I think very highly of him. I think UCF's going to have a massive year, and I think KJ Jefferson is going to be part of that reason.
Hey, UCF's my dark horse. You guys both have him at 6. I have him at 4. I had him when we did transfer portal players on Sunday night. That was my number 1. Like that, he is an absolute perfect fit for Gus Malzahn's system and what he likes to do on offense. And even if you're getting 2022 KJ Jefferson at Arkansas and not 23, where you brought in Dan Enos, who made 0 sense as far as an offensive play caller and scheme to fit KJ Jefferson, and it's like square peg round hole. Like that doesn't make it, like we're going to turn him into something he's not and ignore his strengths. Gus is going to use KJ's strengths. That's when you're going to get the best out of KJ with the weapons they have there. With like, here's a question: who's got the better 3-headed monster? I'm just side tangent. UCF with KJ Jefferson, Penny Boone, and RJ Harvey. Kansas State with Avery Johnson, Giddens, and Edwards.
K-State.
Or West Virginia with Garrett Green,
still K-State,
CJ Donaldson, and Jaheim White. And I know, Scott, I know what your answer is going to be, but I'm more interested in Justin's answer, because like you talk about running back duo, quarterback, like dual threat quarterback. Who's got the best trio to you, Justin?
A lot of miles on KJ Jefferson. I like him. I covered Cincinnati played at Arkansas. I think maybe it's to open the 22 season, and like he's just one of those guys when you see him you're like, holy shit. Like, I mean, he looks like a defensive end. He's just huge, and he can, he's not a great passer, but he's a good passer. He can sling it a little bit. But yeah, as much as I like agree with you guys that Malzahn can tap into this, and I don't know that I'm on the Gus bus. I'm like at this bus stop waiting for the Gus bus, but just because of like, I'm a little hesitant because of the miles on KJ. I think I would lean, not just saying this because Scott's here, I think I would lean Kansas State for the three-headed monster. I have some thoughts on K-State later, as I'm sure we all do. So I think I would lean that way right now. But if like the end of the season, I think you're right. I think he was picked newcomer for the Big 12. You had him number 1 on your transfer rankings. If he goes out and has a great season, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right. There's just so much K-State love today. This is great. All right, number 5.
Making up for what I know is not going to be a fun podcast for Cats fans tomorrow.
Why?
Because I read Shahan's. I predict every single episode or every single game. So I know what he thinks is going to happen to K-State. Andy Mitz is my, all-time rival. I'm kidding. I love Andy. But I also know what you think about K-State as well. So, maybe I'll be surprised, but I'm just glad K-State's getting some love tonight.
There you go. All right. Hey, Justin, number 5 on your list.
Number 5, I went T-Mac, Ted McMillan, wide receiver at Arizona. You could easily put Noah Fafita here. You could maybe put Tacario Davis or a couple other guys for Arizona. But like, to me, T-Mac's potentially best wide receiver in college football. I'm a big Luther Burden guy too. But I think he's in that kind of top echelon. And, I'm a little bit cautiously optimistic of Arizona. I like the top end talent they have. And I know everyone said this, like, yes, if Fish stays and they bring everybody back, this is probably the conference favorite. As much as they kept some of those top guys, they lost a lot of their depth. They lost a lot of, starter potential players. And so I think you're asking a lot in year 1 of a new conference, year 1 of a new coach, to think that they're just going to come in and win the league. But if they do, I think it's going to be the Fafita T-Mac connection. And I think it's just because teams can't find a way to stop McMillan, and he goes off in a couple games.
Spoiler, I will have Noah Fafita on my list, but I did go back and forth between those two guys. And I do think that that is the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the conference, because I'm not a Shedeur believer. But I think that's a good pick, and I'll be interested. That's my most intriguing team. I know that wasn't something we ranked for the 10-12 rankings week, but Arizona is the number 1 most intriguing team in the conference for me, because they bring back that star power, interesting coach to say the least. But losing some of that depth. So I like where your head's at, Justin.
I can't believe this. I don't have an Arizona player on here. And let me just defend myself for a second. Because when I got to the last few picks, like, I started thinking a little bit like outside of the box in different ways. And so somehow I couldn't get Fafita on there, even though, like, he is such a wild card, like, that. You're right. It kind of reminds me, like, he could do for Arizona what, like, oh God, no, I can't think of the quarterback's name. Lamar Jackson did, like, with Louisville, where it was just like, it's the Lamar Jackson game, and he's just going to take that team. Doesn't matter who else is on the roster. They're going to win a bunch of games because of him. And again, Arizona lost a ton on defense. Like, they lost so many players that I just don't know what to think of Arizona. Like, I'm both high on them and very low on them at the same time. So I didn't put one on here. It is my greatest error. Yes, even greater than 2 Iowa State players. And I'm sorry. I am, because I like Fafita and I want an Arizona shirt from Charlie Hustle, but I don't have it. I don't have them. Another one there. Okay, let's move on so no one else can shame me. Number 4 on your list, Justin.
Number 4, I have Ollie Gordon, the Oklahoma State running back, reigning Doak Walker Award winner. Pretty self-explanatory. He was, once they figured out last year, give the ball to Ollie Gordon. That's when Oklahoma State kind of dug themselves out of that early season ditch. And there's a little bit more, like they went into a pistol formation. I give Gundy credit that he changed some things around. Obviously an interesting couple weeks here for Ollie Gordon. He gets arrested on suspicion of DUI, and then, whether Gundy was playing chestnut checkers and put the attention on him at Big 12 Media Days, or whether he was just being Mike Gundy. I have my opinion on that, but you never know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But like, pretty self-explanatory why this guy's important. I think clearly everyone's going to be keying in on him this year. I think you could put Alan Bowman on this list because I think he needs to play better if Oklahoma State's going to have a chance to be in the mix again. I'm like maybe a little bit bearish on Oklahoma State just because I think they overachieved last year. And I think, again, everyone's just going to be like stacking the box to go after Ollie Gordon. But that kid's really good. If he has another season that's, even rivals what he did last year, like they're going to be a tough team to play.
So I have Ollie Gordon at 3, so I have him a spot higher than you. And I think that Ollie Gordon being great, Ollie Gordon being a Heisman contender, Ollie Gordon being Big 12 Player of the Year contender, that opens up everything for Alan Bowman. If you have to use linebackers, have safeties looking in at Ollie Gordon in that elite rushing attack, that allows for easier throws for Alan Bowman. It allows for some of those wide receivers who I'm very high on for Oklahoma State, allows them to have single coverage or allows them to get a step on a safety on a play action play. I think if Ollie Gordon is what we saw, from the K-State game, shoot myself in the head on, why couldn't you guys wait a week to figure that out? But if we see that Ollie Gordon, I think that allows margin of error for Alan Bowman, allows margin for error for, the offensive line and pass pro, allows for margin of error for wide receivers to excel at Oklahoma State. That is going to be the straw that stirs the Oklahoma State drink. So I have him at number 3.
I also have it number 3. I just he is so important. And look, I do think defenses kind of figured out the adjustments that Oklahoma State made as the season went on. You could tell. But even still, you look at the BYU game, and he struggled in the first half. And then the second half, I think he scored all of OSU's touchdowns. Could just touchdown. Even when teams started to figure some things out, they still found ways to get him the ball and to make him effective. And so it will be interesting to see how they use him. Can they get creative? You've got your entire offensive line returning. I know people are really high on Oklahoma State's offensive line. I'm always very hesitant to be overly high on Oklahoma State's offensive line because they were healthy last year doesn't mean that that's not going to go back to the normal trend of you're shuffling through guys because no one can stay healthy. But OSU is going to go as far as Ollie Gordon takes them. Yes, the defense is going to have to take a step forward. I do think this wide receiving core at OSU is way underrated. And Alan Bowman has to be better, but this team is going to go as far as Ollie carries them. It just is.
Which is going to be 50 times a game. Apparently, the first game is what Gundy said.
Y'all, I put a poll on Twitter of what would be a worse punishment if you were a player, miss a game or run stadium steps, and more people picked miss a game. And I was like, y'all have never run stadium steps before in your lives. If you picked, no, I could never want to miss it. Go. I don't mean you go up and down one time. Imagine running the whole stadium all day, like 14 days in a row. Then come tell me, would you rather miss a game or do that? Y'all would rather. I don't understand it. I don't. You just never run stadium steps. It's the worst. But yeah, number 3. They will punish him. So who is since that's who's number 3 for me, and for Scott, who is your number 3?
Another running back. This is where we get to talk about the 3-headed monster. I'm going DJ Giddens here as my number 3. Could very easily put Avery Johnson. Could probably make a Dylan Edwards case. The reason I picked DJ Giddens is really an Avery Johnson case. I'm high on Avery Johnson. I love the hair. I love the confidence. I think he's going to be really good. I am not unfortunately, I'm beyond the gaming part of my life, but I know already that K-State is a popular, college football 25 pick because of Avery Johnson in the running attack. I'm all in on that. K-State was my, team. I picked them first in the media poll for the Big 12, all that kind of stuff.
I'm falling in love with you, Justin. Platonically, but I'm falling in love with you.
I appreciate that.
about to get his Boscoe boys invite when this episode is over.
I know. I'm like, okay, can I kick off Viva La Cats and get Justin to talk about Cincinnati? I just want to hang out with him. Come to Kansas City, eat barbecue. Come to Manhattan, go to Manhattan Brewing Company. Let's be best friends, Justin.
It sounds good to me. I do love the Viva La Cats guys. Those are good people. Anyways, the reason I went Giddens is because as much as I am high on Avery Johnson and like him, like we still haven't seen Avery Johnson, other than the Pop-Tarts Bowl. We haven't seen him in that lead role. I think he threw 66 passes last year. Almost half of them were in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. He was great when he came in. He obviously runs the ball great, but when he's in that lead spot now, he's the guy. Like the best way to take a little pressure off you is have DJ Giddens just be a beast and throw Dylan Edwards in there too. But I think that's going to help him progress as a young quarterback if he has a bell cow or two next to him. And I like DJ Giddens a lot. I think he's, we talked about quarterbacks. There's a ton of good running backs, obviously, in this conference this year. I think he's right up in there in that top group. And so I'm high on Kansas State and think they have they're my number one team to win the league. And I think if they do, Avery Johnson will have a good year, but also DJ Giddens will be a big part of that.
I don't have DJ on my list, but DJ the Blue Jay Giddens, the pride of Junction City, someone who was not recruited at all, someone who was just like, okay, he just kind of showed up on K-State's roster on scholarship. And, he had a big year in Deuce Vaughn's final year. I think he's going to be an NFL guy. And in the state of Kansas, where Devin Neal, who is maybe my all-time favorite KU football player, this is not meant as shade at Devin Neal. DJ Giddens had more yards from scrimmage last year. He is just right on par with him on yards per touch. It's not just workhorse. He has been a great asset in the passing game as well. He's not on my list. Spoiler alert, Avery Johnson's on my list. Mainly because Dylan Edwards is there. And then there's some young running backs that hopefully they redshirt. Hopefully we don't have to figure out who they are. But I think K-State's running back room goes super deep. Brian Anderson, friend of the pod, has done a great job there. I love DJ, the Blue Jay Giddens, maybe my favorite player on this team, but he's not on my list. But I appreciate you having him on this list. And again, Phillip came into this being my favorite person on this podcast. You've now overtaken him tenfold. You're about to lap Phillip. So watch out, Phillip. I'm now a big athletic guy and a big Justin guy. So sorry, man. I'm going to look for a transfer over to their network.
Well, if that didn't give him a boost up, this will. I don't have DJ Giddens on my list. I don't have Avery Johnson on my list either.
Did you pick 10 people?
Time out.
All Justin, pick the Iowa State starting offense? What do you have?
Yeah. He has Jalen Noel, Abu Sama, Rocco Brecht. He's like, oh yeah, Matt Campbell's gonna suit up and play tight end. My God, whatever.
There's four tight ends on my list. No,
I do love Steve Klotz. That's such an Iowa State name,
isn't it though?
Yeah, I already know I'm not going to want to listen tomorrow. Whatever.
It's fine. Number 2 on your list. Yes.
Number 2, my last 2 are quarterbacks. Number 2, I'm going Jalen Daniels, Kansas quarterback. He's one of my favorite players in college football to watch, let alone the Big 12. But he's got to stay healthy. They don't have Jason Bean there anymore. I think Kansas can compete for a Big 12 championship, but if they do it, Jalen Daniels has to be there and play more than 10 games. And that just has not been something he's been able to do, unfortunately, the past couple of years. Back injuries are tough. I certainly I'm not blaming him for the injury history. But to me, we know he's good when he's on the field. It's just he's so important that he has to stay on it for them.
He's my number 2 as well. Debated him being number 1. He's electric when he can play. You mentioned it. The most he's played in a season is 9 games. I think, and if you dig far enough on YouTube and if you read some of the stuff, there's some, the other KU players who went to media days maybe didn't get the talking points. I don't think he's as healthy as they're trying to let on. I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if he played half the season. But if he does, that's massive. Andy Kotelnicki gone. Jason Bean gone. Some of their offensive analysts that had all sorts of praise here in the Kansas City market. I hear more KU talk than I want to, but they're gone. They replace a lot of analysts. They replace a lot of coaches. And look, their defense isn't going to be good. I do not think KU – I think KU is going to have to score 30-plus a game to win, and they're not going to be able to do that without Jalen Daniels. All the praise to Cole Ballard. Andy Kotelnicki's gone. He's not going to be able to do smoke and mirrors and get him to have a serviceable game. They have a true freshman coming out of Detroit who I know they're super high on, but he's not going to be able to get them to compete for Arlington. If you gave him Mike's magic stuff and he was able to be healthy for 12 games, KU 110%, as much as I hate to say it, they would be an Arlington contender. So that says all it is. The only thing when I look at this list, I wonder when I'm talking about it is how I didn't put him number one. But I think he's a glass boy. I think what's his? Here's a question for you guys: how many wins does Jalen Daniels as a starting quarterback have over teams with a winning record?
I don't know.
I think 2 years ago when he played the most, they only ended up with like 5 or 6 wins, right? Like they started really hot and then tailed off.
Yeah, so it's 2. He beat Houston on the road in overtime when they were still in the AAC, and then they beat Duke. So all these marquee wins, he beat a bad Texas team. He still has a lot of proof. He is electric. I'm not saying anything bad about him as a player, but he still has a lot to prove. And Jason Bean is not walking through that door who, despite what KU fans want to say, Jason Bean was a better quarterback.
I have number one. So I did put him number one but I put healthy Jalen Daniels, not just Jalen Daniels, because healthy Jalen Daniels is it. If he is healthy for a whole season, yeah, it completely changes the game. And
he is a Heisman contender if he's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, Jason Bean, no one had a better backup in the Big 12. Like, no one. Like, he was but Jason Bean.
Hey, now Avery
Johnson
was a backup. So I'm
Jason Bean would have started for a lot of teams and could have gone and done so. Like, he could have started for most of the G5 teams. He was a good quarterback for Kansas last year. It's not an option. Like, if Kansas fans are like, nah, we'll be fine, there's so and so, like, anybody who thinks that they're fine is completely and totally like disregarding Jason Bean, and I will not take Jason Bean slander on this podcast or in this network. It will not happen. So yeah, I've got him number one because healthy Jalen Daniels, it's completely changes the math for Kansas. Unhealthy this year, especially, it could get rough. It really could. All right, number one.
So my number one for me was obvious, and it's Cam Rising. And, a little bit of a similar argument here, but this is a guy who has not played since like January of 23, but 22 season, missed all of last year. I have a ton of respect for Kyle Whittingham and Utah and what they do. I do think they're going to come in and be a contender. I think if you're kind of looking for like who's that team that could emerge from the Big 12 consistently, I think Utah is on that list, here in the near short-term future. But like this year, I have no idea what they're going to get out of Cam Rising. I have no clue if he's going to look anything like 2022 Cam Rising, if it's going to take a couple weeks, if he can make it through a whole season. And so for me, like when I think about important, again, I'm kind of thinking about, all right, who's going to have the biggest impact on how good this team is. If you get 2022, 2021 Cam Rising back when he was like 32, 33 years old, then, I think that Utah is, that they should be, considered up there with K-State as one of the favorites for the league. If you get a guy who, looks like he hasn't played football in over a year and looks like a 7th-year quarterback and can't stay healthy, then I'm not sure what we're getting out of Utah. And you can kind of say, Brent Keithy, the tight end, same thing. He hasn't played in a year and a half. Micah Bernard, their running back, missed a lot of time last year. So this is kind of the deal with Utah in general. But yeah, for me, Cam Rising is like the biggest question mark for like kind of how this Big 12 season could play out in general because of how important he could be on the Ultimate Champion potentially.
I have them at 4, mainly because if you look at Utah's schedule, if you get like a part-time schedule for Cam Rising, if you were to say, hey, he's playing 6-7 games, if you get to hand pick those 6-7 games, I think Cam Rising could still get them to Arlington if you get the right 6 or 7 games. But you laid it out. If they have playoff ambition, if they have, hey, we're going to come in and be the big bad of this conference like Utah fans think they're going to be, they need 12 games of Cam Rising to hit that potential, to be that final boss, to be that, heavyweight contender that they think they are. So I have him at 4. And again, I think when I go through my list, everyone's going to look at my number 1 and be like, okay, you could have pushed everyone up, and Cam Rising probably could have been number 3. But I'm interested. I'll be interested to see how he looks those first 4 weeks in the season.
I have him number 2. If you're going to have the expectations that everyone has for Utah, and I do think that they are, I listened to the Split Zone Duo pod today, and they did their Big 12 preview, and they do a great job. And I wanted to shout out Richard Johnson because he said something I haven't seen enough national people mention, that because everyone still views the Big 12 as the air raid, everyone's throwing it 100 times, nobody plays defense conference. And he made the point of like, the Big 12 is more familiar with Utah's style of play than national people who don't pay attention to the Big 12 actually realize, because Iowa State is more similar to Utah in the level of physicality. Kansas State is more similar to Utah in the level of physicality. Like this idea that, and you saw some Pac-12 teams kind of adjust to that, but a lot of the Pac-12 wasn't really doing that. The Big 12 has been ahead of the we're still spread, but we are less air raid, and we are more. We're talking about the year of the running back. We're talking about teams, Iowa State looking at a 4-man front because so many teams are going to adjust defenses to defend the run. Like, I don't think Utah is going to come in and just be this. We've never seen anything as physical as this, or this kind of ground and pound. We're just not familiar. It's not the level of zig to everyone's zag that people seem to think it is, in my opinion, having watched the Big 12 for the last few years. Everyone who's like, no, they're not, no, Big 12 fan teams aren't ready for what Utah's bringing. No, they are way more than you realize. And so with that in mind, and because of the expectations for Utah is only reaching those expectations if Cam Rising looks like he did in 2022 and stays healthy all season. It's kind of like Jalen Daniels. It changes the math. Without Cam Rising, they look like 2023 Utah. They're going to make a bowl game. There's enough talent there. They're going to have a nice season. But there's a difference between like a 7-win team and an Arlington team holding a Big 12 trophy in their first year if Cam Rising plays the whole season healthy. So
I love it. Do you want me to start 10-1? Do you want to talk about Charlie Hustle, the best clothing company in the world? What do you want to do?
I mean, you didn't give me an opportunity for a cool segue, so I guess I'll just take that and run with it, Scott. Thanks so much. Yeah, Charlie Hustle, sponsor here at the 12 podcast and the 12 Network. Look, they love the Big 12 as much as we do, and as much as all of you who are watching or listening later do, which is why they have so much Big 12 gear. They've got gear for every single school in the Big 12 right now. All 16 teams are covered. They just put out Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, and have absolutely fantastic gear for all 3 of them. The Arizona shirt with the Wildcat with the cowboy hat. I love it, and I want it. It needs to be in my t-shirt drawer that's already stuffed full of t-shirts, and my wife tells me I need to stop buying things for schools that I don't cheer for, and I'm like, but I do cheer for all the Big 12 schools. It's fine. She understands. It's so good. There's the ASU shirt that I really, really, really want, and I need the UCF Citronaut shirt. Either one of the options to be back in a large, and they haven't restocked it yet, and I'm bugging them constantly that I need the Citronaut shirt back in. They have all 16 teams. The Big 8 roadshow they just did was incredible. I'm also waiting for the green Big 8 shirt to come back in stock. I sound bad, but look, they're not done. There's more gear coming. So what you want to do is you want to go right now, and you want to see what they do have, and you want to use the promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items and stock up. And then when the season gets closer, and you're like, I still don't have enough. I don't have enough things. Great, they're going to be dropping more right before the season starts, and you can use that promo code again, 101215. 15% off all non-sale items. Check out the sale stuff too, because they've got a few Big 12 items in their sale collection for t-shirts that are just $20. So charliehustle.com, that's where you want to go. They love the Big 12. They've got great Big 12 gear. They've got so much to choose from. Just spend a couple hours scrolling, Fill that card up with everything you want. Use that promo code at charliehustle.com, 10, 12, 15. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh.
And I will say, because I'm usually asleep, Sporting KC is playing at 9:30 as we're talking. They just dropped some new Kansas City Wizards vintage stuff on their site. I'm based in Kansas City. I cheer for all the Kansas City pro teams. If you cheer for the same pro teams as I do, they also have some great stuff. All right, I'm getting to number 10. And, not in nearly as cool a way as Justin did it. I took number 10, and I did go a little rogue. It's like, okay, this has no bearing on Arlington. I don't think it has really any bearing on maybe even bowl eligibility, but I have DeQuan Finn in there for Baylor. Look, I don't think Baylor's going to be good, but he holds – and a harken back to a very famous interview that a former KU AD gave talking about Roy Williams. But DeQuan Finn holds Dave Aranda's fate in his hand like a dove. He will either crush it and kill it, and Dave Aranda gets fired, or he's going to be good enough to get them to a bowl game, and Dave Aranda will live to see another season. So it really, Dave Aranda's coaching career is in the hands of DeQuan Finn. So that's who I have at number 10. Am I just zooming through this, or are you guys going to tell me, wow, that was good, Scott. You're awesome. You're handsome. How are you still single, Scott?
Sorry, we're getting a little wonky. Can you go back?
I'm here.
Did you hear me all through that, Justin?
I got you. You were loud and clear.
We're good.
Must be Phillip's fault.
Okay, so it's Phillip's fault. All right, we'll go to number 9 then. I have
okay.
Oh, well, do you want to say something about DeQuan Finn? I don't care. This is your show.
I do like DeQuan. I'll say it. I do like him. I think that was a good pickup by then. I think Baylor will be better. I talked to a Big 12 coach who thought that they could have quit last year as a team on Aranda and felt like they didn't. I like Aranda getting back on the sticks on defense and basically taking over as coordinator. I'm not sure if they'll be good enough to save his job, but I think they will be better.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to Jeff Traylor, Baylor head coach anyways. Number 9, I have Abu Sama. Look, you guys heard me say what I said about Rocco. I'm not a believer. This is 3 OCs in 3 years. If you can just hand it off to a guy who's going to get you 5 yards of carry, that makes the job easier for the OC, makes the job easier for the offensive coordinator. I think there's a chance that Blizzard game just becomes a, just folklore for Iowa State. I think that might be like a cult hero type of game that Abu Sama does not go in as, one of the next all-time great running backs. And it was just, hey, that was an all-time great game. But if he can be that running back that I painfully had to see through a blizzard, risking my life driving to that game, then I think that does change the equation for Iowa State. So that's why I have Abu Sama there. And Justin, you heard me talk about Rocco quite a bit and how I'm not a believer. Are you a believer in Abu? Is that blizzard game going to go down in folklore, or is that just going to be the coming out party for the next future NFL guy for Iowa State?
No, I'm in. I don't know if he's going to average like 7 yards a carry or whatever he finished last year.
I think it was like 20 yards. It was so bad, dude.
In large part because of that game. But no, like I said, I'm bullish on Iowa State in general, and he's definitely a part of that. Great name, Abu Sama III. So you get points for that right there. And yeah, I mean, especially if you're not sure on Rocco, like the skill talent around him is only going to help, and I think they have high expectations for him this year for sure.
Definitely, Phillip. I see your back. For those not watching, was Abu Sama one of the 2 Iowa State guys you had on your list?
No.
Wow. Christmas. I'm just going to move on. 8 is where I have Avery Johnson. And the reason why I had Avery Johnson at 8 is I think depending on hypothetically if he were to miss a couple games, K-State did bring in Taquan Robinson, who started a bunch of games for UConn, a bad UConn team, but he's a 5th-year senior. He spent time at Penn State. He knows what it's like to be in a big program. He knows what it's like to start in games. I think with the 2 running backs that you have, I think with the tight ends that you have, and then the intermediate route running ability that you have, I think K-State could survive a handful of games if Avery Johnson was on the shelf and still win and still get to Arlington. Again, it depends on those games. Definitely do not want it to be Oklahoma State. You don't want that to be KU or Iowa State, but you have a manageable schedule. So that's why I have Avery Johnson at 8. And I will say that Blake Barnett, who is a true freshman quarterback, he could factor in a hypothetical situation where you're without Avery Johnson with those two running backs. He broke all of Christian McCaffrey's prep records in Colorado for total touchdowns scored. He's an absolute beast when running the ball. So in a hypothetical world where I had to craft a scenario where K-State survives Avery Johnson missing a couple games, I can find abilities to still call them wins. Also, the antithesis of Jalen Daniels being at number 2 on my list, outside of COVID doesn't count. 2020 didn't exist. Since Joe Klanderman has been the defensive coordinator for K-State, they've never had worse than the number 29 defense in the Kelly Ford defensive ratings. So again, I think they could survive Avery Johnson missing a couple games better than some of the other schools.
Love a good K Ford name drop there. I think we're about to get a cat appearance here again. Look, I'm so used to Kansas State being able to trot out a 5th string former walk-on wide receiver at quarterback and winning a game. So, no, Thunder. Okay. Cat. I'm going to have to get the cat out of here.
It's okay. So. You talk about the cat. I'm going to move on because that's where I have Noah Fafita. Look, I think there's a scenario where they could be Arlington contenders. I called them the most intriguing team in the Big 12, and I truly mean that. If Noah Fafita can be the guy we saw last year, if his weapons can stay healthy, I think that's going to be a spicy offense. We'll see what happens in the trenches. We'll see what happens on defense. But again, I think that they could be, and they will be, the most intriguing team in the Big 12. And that is it's going to be a non-conference game, but I'm hoping that might be maybe an early top 20 matchup on a Friday night on Fox, the debut of Fox Football Friday night. Again, Justin, I know you're covering the entire conference. Manhattan has a regional airport with direct flights to Dallas very early in the morning on Saturday. So you might need to come in and see that game for yourself. Noah Fafita versus Avery Johnson.
They just redid that airport, didn't they?
Yes, I've never flown out of it. I live in Kansas City, so I'm using a brand new airport out here in Kansas City as well. But I've heard great things, so I think you should fly in for that game. Phillip, you can too, but Justin's my new best friend, so it doesn't really matter.
That's fine. That's fine.
I had friends. KJ Jefferson as my number 6. We already talked about it. I have Taj Brooks at number 5. We all know what happens to Texas Tech quarterbacks. They die, metaphorically, not literally. But they're not making it through the season with a starting quarterback. They're going to have like 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks throughout the year. Patrick Mahomes is not walking through that door. So can Taj Brooks be that workhorse? I think that he ended up being the number 2 running back on the preseason poll, right? Again, you could have made an argument for 7 different guys. And when you look at his yards per touch, it actually isn't that great, but they are so dependent on him. So they're going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 different starting quarterbacks throughout the year. I'm a Joey McGuire believer. Again, I praise that number 10 pick for you, Justin, because I thought it laid out perfectly what Joey McGuire is trying to do at Texas Tech. But I think for this season, if Taj Brooks lives up to what he did last year, takes that step forward, and maybe they have a little bit more health, maybe they have that season where they're contending for Arlington like everyone was saying last year. Maybe, I think Phillip loves saying this, maybe everyone was just a year too early on Texas Tech. So I have Taj Brooks at number 5.
Yeah, he's a good at Brooks, and Texas Tech are a good example of what you talked about before, Phillip, which is like, Texas Tech has Zach Kittley. That's the air raid tree, and obviously the air raid history there at Tech. But I think they recognize what they had in Brooks last year and maybe some of the limitations with the injuries at quarterback. And they kind of have adjusted. And, they're not like a running 21 personnel team, but they've definitely run the ball a lot more than I think people would expect from, their history and identity previously.
Yeah, no, agreed. I like Taj Brooks a lot. He is not the Texas Tech player on my list. We'll get to that here in a minute. But I mean, again, it's the year of the running back in the Big 12. Like, there are a bunch of the best running backs in the country in the Big 12 this year, like just hands down, period. It's a running back. It's a running back conference, and Taj Brooks, I'm perfectly fine with him being the RB2 in the Big 12 this year. That I got no problem with that. I got no problem with him being on the list. So,
well, and like half the teams in the conference think they have an All-American contender at running back. I talked with Ralph Amson doing Arizona State before this, and that's the spot where he feels the most confident. He thinks that they have a good stable of running backs. I feel like almost everyone has a feeling about running backs in the conference. So I think that you should probably print up T-shirts year of the running back with the Big 12 logo on it and hope they don't flag you for copyright. So I'll keep it moving. We're already over an hour. I had Cam Rising at 4, Ollie Gordon at 3, Jalen Daniels at 2. So we talked about those, but I did put Travis Hunter at 1. I thought I was being cute because look, I think for Colorado, I think he's probably the number 2 or number 3 player on their offense. I think he's either the number 1 or number 2 player on their defense. And again, I think it's impossible for him to be playing 100 games or 100 plays a game. I think they're going to have to figure out a way to load management and figure out, okay, are you going to be our starting cornerback or wide receiver and have you spell in at the other spots? But his ability to be one of the best players on the field on both sides of the ball, as much as I don't believe in Colorado, as much as I think that Coach Prime is going to have to change a lot of things if he's ever going to get Colorado to a bowl, I think in a world of specialization where kids in middle school are not just playing one sport, but only playing one position starting in 6th grade, the fact that we see Travis Hunter at a Power 5 level last year, excelling at wide receiver and cornerback, I think he is the most electric player in all of college football. I think he is maybe the best athlete, the best pure football player in the conference. So I put him at 1. I know it's a quarterback world. I think Phillip made the correct argument. If Shadur Sanders goes down, you're picking Colorado to go 2-10. If Travis Hunter goes down, hey, they might still go 5-7. But that level of athlete, that level of football player in this conference, I put him at number 1. Should I have? No. I listened to all the arguments for everyone else, but that's who I had, and I'm sticking with it. So that's my list.
I like it. I got no complaints. No complaints. All right.
I like it too. One of the most exciting players in college football, and that's worth something for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Let's get weird. Here's my last 4 that we have not talked about. Number 6 is Wyatt Millam at West Virginia. If this team is going to run the ball as much as they're going to, even if Garrett Green takes a step forward from a passing standpoint, this is still going to be an offense that runs the ball with its 3-headed monster. The offensive line should still be good. It's not going to be as good as last year. It's going to put that much more emphasis on your starting left tackle to keep your quarterback up and to help make sure, as kind of the leader of this offensive line, and I think the most senior guy on it and the best guy on it, like to keep this offense going and doing what it needs to do. Like I thought about one of the running backs, but they both run the ball so much. And I thought about Garrett Green, but like he's basically your third running back and he needs to take a step forward. But if your offensive line, the most important player on their offensive line to me is the most important player on West Virginia, given how much they want to run that ball and that be the focal point of that offense, even if Garrett Green takes a step forward. So I put Wyatt Millam in. And as we all know here at the 10-12 podcast, nobody loves offensive lines like I do. I had to have at least one offensive line. There has to be an offensive lineman on my list. It's impossible to have a top players list and me not put an offensive lineman on it. So he's my number 6. Number 8, we all had someone different from Texas Tech. I put Baron Morton. It is Morton time. And we can make the jokes about the fact that's the t-shirt I want printed is it's Morton time, but it's got to be,
it's Morton time. And then on the back, we can all make our jokes, but ... Yeah,
it's Morton time. I know this is the biggest if possible. If he is healthy, which I'm waiting for them to prove, and he stays healthy for a season. If Texas Tech just has one consistent quarterback for a season, then year 3 for Joey McGuire at Texas Tech will kind of be the year like I thought it would be, which is the true breakout year, which is hitting that like 9-win plateau, maybe even a 10-win plateau. Maybe they're getting late into the season and they are contending for Arlington with the other teams in the conference, 8 other teams in the conference. Baron Morton is his health, because look, we've felt the last couple of years like, okay, I feel good about who's kind of behind there. Okay, we'll kind of see like the backups have some potential. I can't name the backups for Texas Tech this year. The depth is gone. They've all left. Like Shuck is gone. Smith's down in Houston. Shuck's at Louisville. Smith's in Houston. Like, I don't know who the backups are at Texas Tech at this point. The depth is gone. If Morton goes down, it's going to be, again, this is one of those, if the quarterback goes down, I have real concerns about what happens at Texas Tech, because I don't know. Maybe there's a true freshman quarterback at Texas Tech that's going to come in and be the guy that no one knew, and it's the next Patrick Mahomes. But as far as I know, if they could just keep Barron Morton healthy for a full season as the starting quarterback at Texas Tech, I think they can have that breakthrough year that we kind of want, or I've been waiting for Joey McGuire in Lubbock.
Who plays the highest percentage of their team's offensive snaps? Morton, Daniels, or Rising?
It's a good parlor game. I haven't been in the threads lately on Texas Tech, but I know at one point he was like seeing shoulder specialist, which isn't what you want. Is there an update? I think he was at media day.
I mean, the weird like, hey, we're just resting him for spring. We don't even play him, was like, Joe, you didn't need to say anything at all. Like, that would have been like, you've made this a story when it could have been a non-story by not saying anything. They're selling that he's healthy. I'm kind of the same way with him as I am Jalen Daniels, of like, I'm going to believe it when I see it, because at this point, there's a lot of talk about it, but it's not talk that makes me like feel like confident and warm and fuzzy. So we'll see. I mean, I think to answer that question, I know it was a joke, but I'll take Cam Rising because he's taken a full year off to like try and actually fully get healthy and kind of back to normal. And they just keep trying to throw Jalen Daniels back out there, and they want to throw Barron Morton back. Like, it feels like they're trying to rush him back out there because they need him. And Utah was like, you know what, Cam, like, you could have come back out, but just go sit over there. It's fine. The season is what it is. We're good. Let's just wait till next year. At number 9, here's my other Iowa State player. I have Jaden Higgins. To me, we've got Rocco Beckton. He's got to take that step forward, and he can be big. Iowa State, not a like wide receiver school. But if Jaden Higgins can be what people think he can be at Iowa State, and you've got that kind of a real offensive weapon, and we've seen them have a wide receiver that could step up at Iowa State, and it make that much of a difference for them, and guys take over. If Higgins can be that for Iowa State, that's what they need to take the next step. Yeah, Rocco taking a step is big and important, but he still needs somebody. Like, Rocco taking the next step is like, he's a better quarterback. Abu Sama could be awesome. There has got to be a weapon for Rocco Becht that you trust and rely on and know. If Rocco Becht and Jaden Higgins, that's why I had them on here. If that duo works and it's really good, if Jaden Higgins is the guy that Iowa State fans think he could be this year, I mean, I've seen projections of him being like second, third team All Big 12, like preseason stuff. If he is that good, Iowa State's going to have a season. Like, I'm not saying they're going to break the 9-win mark for the first time in school history, but like they're going to have themselves a season, because the defense is going to be solid. We have a lot of expectations, Sama. So that's why I have Higgins. All right, number 10. This is my just bear with me. A little bit of this is just, I just wanted to. I put Dante Corleone. I don't have high expectations for Cincinnati. But man, hearing that he is at least like back on the path of playing, I just wanted to kind of be like, I want him to play. I want him to be out there. Because if he's not, I don't have a lot of other reasons to watch Cincinnati outside of the Big 12 school, and I'm supposed to pay attention to them. But he is so important to that defense and to that team. And for him to be out there playing, like, I think they would not just miss him on the field. Like, not having him on the field and playing, I think would kind of be one of those, like, it's like you're missing a piece of yourself, is how important he is to that Cincinnati team and to that Cincinnati defense. And especially when you have a guy who's dealing with had to step away from football, that kind of scare, that kind of health situation. Think about how that rallies teams a lot of the time. When you have something and someone on your roster that you can rally around in some way, if he's actually out there playing and he is healthy and ready to go for the full season for Cincinnati, I think that is the kind of little spark, the kind of little thing that could help Cincinnati win a game or two that they wouldn't have otherwise. I know it's a little bit of an out there. I know it's a little bit of a reach, but I really like him. I like to see him. I'm going to be thrilled to see him on the field. And it's like it really does feel like for Cincinnati, it's like a piece of their heart that they need to have out there, because not having him out there is going to have an impact beyond just not having one of the best defensive tackles in college football.
No, I'm totally with you. I mean, yeah, first thing, he's a great kid, like great human being, local Cincinnati kid. And you're right, everything you said about him, he's become a leader in that locker room. He's a guy who, like, when you ask people, oh, who's your favorite teammate, like a lot of them say Dante. He's just that kind of personality. He's done a lot for the program in terms of bridging, the move from Fickle and then bringing in Satterfield. Like the fact that he stayed and was, kind of a champion and a voice for people to say, like, no, stick with the team. That really meant a lot to the program. So, first things first for him, I just hope he's healthy and gets through all of that, long term in that sense. I do, I've talked to people there. I think there's some cautious optimism that, when exactly he'll be back full go, they're not sure, but that there's a path back to playing. And I certainly know he wants to do that. And you're right. Outside of all the leadership and intangible stuff, he's their best defensive player. And, that team struggled defensively last year, but they're going to struggle a lot if he's not out there, especially new defensive coordinator, and Tyson Veit for first year. So, they really need him to play. I know more importantly, they want to make sure he's healthy, but I love that pick because you're right. When he's playing, at the top of his potential, he's an All-American. And a great name, great nickname, great name.
Oh yeah. Okay. Dante Corleone that's Big 12 all name team right there. That's some good stuff. That's good stuff. All right. I know that I like, tear me apart from my other picks. Scott, go ahead.
No, I outside of having so many Iowa State fans, or not fans, players on there, I liked it. I liked it.
Okay, all right.
Too many Iowa State players, but again, whatever.
That's fine. It's fine. I gotta get them happy. I'll just put this in the Wide Right Natty Light Discord, and they'll talk about it and be excited about it. I know there's about 3 of them who will. All right, this has been a ton of fun. We have gone longer than I expected, but I don't really care. This has been a very enjoyable time. You guys, both of you. Awesome. Scott, you're always awesome. Justin, we do not get you on here enough, and we will try and rectify and remedy that this season. Justin, do me a favor. Obviously, you write for The Athletic, and you do a fantastic job. And I know how some people feel about The Athletic and certain people there. Y'all, Justin is just read the writers. Don't worry about the whatever. Okay, set all that stuff aside. Justin, where can everybody check out the work you do? The fantastic work you do, I will note, covering the Big 12 Conference.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm on Twitter at Williams_Justin. And yeah, if you haven't, subscribed to The Athletic, and I'll be covering. I just actually made a stop through Big 12 country today. I have a couple of Big 12 specific stories coming up here before the season, and appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
While we've been recording, I became a first-time ever Athletic subscriber just for you, Justin. Not kidding. So,
Scott, I appreciate you. We're going to clip this and send it to the powers that be at The Athletic to make sure they see this.
Please do. I'll say anything I need to.
That guy, the guy that we blocked, subscribe, who swore he would never subscribe to The Athletic because
that's true.
Subscribed. Justin,
I think I could probably compile my own stuff that I've said and tweeted, but again, I enjoyed chatting with you and always enjoyed chatting with Phillip. I'll just segue this into my 45 seconds of fame. Phillip, I always appreciate you letting me come on. I think every time I come on, it goes longer than you want it to. But I appreciate it. Being part of the 10-12 network for Boscoe's boys, it truly is one of the best thing that happened to the show. I think anytime where I'm maybe feeling in a little bit of a slump, I chat with you and it gets my juices going. So I appreciate being part of this. I always listen to Rankings Week, loved being part of it. Boscoe's Boys has been going 5 episodes a week all month outside of 4th of July. We'll be doing that all the way through the balance of the year. We'll have Phillip on. I might have to manufacture these and have Justin to come on as well. So at Boscoe's Boys, 5 episodes a week, all the way through the balance of 2024. And who knows, maybe if things go as well as we want to, maybe we'll have to stretch that into January as well. Love your neighbor. There we go.
It's been fun. We've got one more night of this. You're welcome, honey. One more night tomorrow night. I will not say who the guests are. I know we basically already have, but I'm not going to say who the guests are because as soon as I do,
I already said it. I'm so sorry.
I know, but I didn't say it. It's okay if you said I didn't say it. If I say it, it jinxes it, and they'll both text me within the next half hour that hey, I'm not going to be there. And I'm sorry, I had this.
I will do it. If Andy drops out, I will do it.
I know. Yeah, I know you will. But we are doing our Big 12 preseason ranking 1 through 16 seems like the perfect way to end rankings week. This has been a ton of fun. If you're listening in audio form, again, 5 stars, go subscribe to The Athletic. And if it has an opportunity, just be like, I subscribe because of Justin Williams and I only want to read Justin Williams' work. Please leave all other people out of my mentions. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Justin, Scott, again, thank you so much. We went long, but I don't care. This was a great time. We'll be back tomorrow. We will talk to you all then.
Sports Social Podcast Network.